You're watching Reuters TV. Here are your top stories.
A shock early election for Britain.
Labour's uphill struggle ahead of a snap general election. Why Lady Gaga is video calling Prince William.
This is Reuters Now.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has just announced that Britain will be holding a snap election on the 8th of June. Outside number 10 Downing Street, I'm Reuters reporter Mia Womersley, where after a Cabinet meeting, the PM announced that Britain will head to the polls in just over 7 weeks' time. The announcement came as a real surprise. The news breaking earlier this morning that Theresa May would be making some sort of announcement. Now, it's unusual for leaders to make a statement here outside number 10 Downing Street, and most of them only use this setting for major announcements. It's been just over 3 weeks since Theresa May officially triggered Brexit, beginning the 2-year process of negotiations to see Britain leave the EU. Now, she's blamed this snap election on the other parties, saying that they were trying to derail that process. May's Conservatives are currently far ahead of the Labour Party opposition, and she said that she'd introduce legislation on Wednesday to pave the way for this early election, because under current legislation, the next vote wasn't due to take place until the year 2020. Markets reacted to the news as sterling rose against the dollar, with Theresa May insisting that Britain has the right plan for negotiating Britain's leaving the EU, and saying that she needs political unity here in London.
Britain's opposition Labour Party faces an uphill struggle after Prime Minister Theresa May announces an early election. I'm UK political correspondent Kylie McClellan in Westminster, where MPs have been reacting to the surprise news.
I welcome the opportunity.
Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has welcomed the announcement of an early election, saying his party will provide an alternative to Theresa May's government. That is slightly surprising in some ways, in that his party are more than 20 points behind in the polls, and his own personal ratings are dwarfed by Theresa May. A poll last week put her personal ratings up 50% and his on just 14%. Labour have been on election footing for quite a while. Prime Minister Theresa May took over last summer after the referendum without an election, so there's been a continuous rumour that there could be an early vote. Labour have been announcing quite a lot of policies over the last couple of weeks aimed at garnering support for the party, so they're certainly ready. But early bookmakers' odds suggest Theresa May's Conservatives would win again, win a larger majority than they have at the moment. The Liberal Democrats, who were almost wiped out at the last election, have said that this will be a chance for people to vote against May's plan for what they call a hard Brexit. They say they've already had 1,000 new members this morning since May's announcement, so they're feeling pretty confident of gaining seats. Before the election can take place, the government needs to overturn the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, which currently means that an election can't be held until 2020. So Theresa May has said she will introduce legislation to Parliament on Wednesday, and MPs will vote. She needs a 2/3 majority, and with Labour saying they welcome the election, that is likely to pass quite easily.
A wild ride for UK markets Tuesday, sterling tumbling against the dollar on news that Prime Minister Theresa May was to make a surprise announcement. But the pound later bounced back from those losses as news of the snap election broke. Reuters chief markets correspondent Jamie McGeever.
The thinking being that Theresa May wins the election with a vastly increased majority, strengthens her position, strengthens her mandate, and takes more control of the Brexit negotiations, thereby marginalising to whatever extent the hard Brexiteers who up until now appear to have been driving government policy.
A different story for equities. The benchmark FTSE index down around 1.5% in the hour after the announcement. Traders betting a stronger pound could cut into overseas earnings for big British firms. As the days go by, plenty of other concerns could start to arise.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said the vote strengthens her mandate for an independence referendum, and there's also the question of a potential nationalist majority in the north of Ireland as well. So we could see on June 9 Theresa May and the Conservatives consolidating their power and perhaps leading to a slightly softer Brexit on one hand, yet with the very existence of the UK itself in greater peril.
For now, though, market reaction to the election seemingly positive. Sterling hitting 2-month highs against the dollar, but market sentiment could prove every bit as volatile as the politics.
At this moment of enormous national significance, there should be unity here in Westminster. But instead, there is division. The country is coming together, but Westminster is not. In recent weeks, Labour have threatened to vote against the final agreement we reach with the European Union. The Liberal Democrats have said they want to grind the business of government to a standstill. The Scottish National Party say they will vote against the legislation that formally repeals Britain's membership of the European Union. And unelected members of the House of Lords have vowed to fight us every step of the way. Their political game playing will continue, and the negotiations with the European Union will reach their most difficult stage in the run-up to the next scheduled election. Division in Westminster will risk our ability to make a success of Brexit, and it will cause damaging uncertainty and instability to the country. So we need a general election, and we need one now, because we have at this moment a one-off chance to get this done while the European Union agrees its negotiating position and before the detailed talks begin. Let everybody put forward their proposals for Brexit and their programmes for government. And let us remove the risk of uncertainty and instability and continue to give the country the strong and stable leadership it demands.
Arkansas officials vowing to move ahead with a series of lethal injections over the next 2 weeks, even after a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court blocked 2 executions planned for Monday night, hours before they were set to take place. Arkansas has faced a series of legal challenges since it announced plans to execute 8 convicted prisoners in quick order before the end of April. The state last put an inmate to death 12 years ago. The reason for the sudden rush? One of the drugs in the state's stockpile of lethal poisons is set to expire. 2 men were set to die Monday night, Don Davis and Bruce Ward. Both had spent more than 20 years on death row. Both are convicted murderers. Their attorneys requested stays of execution over questions over the prisoners' mental competency. And on Monday, the Arkansas State Supreme Court granted a stay in both executions. State officials quickly appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. 15 minutes before the execution warrants were set to expire, the answer came back. The state's appeal was denied. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson and State Attorney General Leslie Rutledge saying they're planning to go ahead with 2 more lethal injections on Thursday. Death penalty opponents have decried Arkansas's rush to execute inmates, some of the concern focusing on the expiring drug, midazolam, a sedative supposed to render the patient unconscious before 2 other drugs stop the heart and lungs. But in at least 2 occasions, the drug appears to have failed, leading to botched and horrific deaths. States have struggled to find reliable sources of lethal injection drugs as pharmaceutical companies have increasingly refused to supply chemicals for lethal injections. The number of executions in the U.S. fell to a 25-year low in 2016, as overall violent crime rates declined in the last quarter century.
Clad in orange with weapons drawn, hardline Hindu men rally through a Muslim neighbourhood in India's most populous state. They're known as the Hindu Youth Force, a private militia set up by the powerful cleric and state leader Yogi Adityanath. And right now, they call the shots on the streets of Uttar Pradesh. Reuters' Rupam Jain reports on the latest developments as the hardline holy man cements his grip on power in a region home to more than 200 million people.
Is it legal to slaughter a buffalo for its meat? Is it legal to consume meat delicacies in India? Or is it legal for a Muslim boy to fall in love with a Hindu girl or vice versa? These are the big questions which are dominating the political and social narrative of India these days. In less than a month, a hardline Hindu chief minister came to power in India's largest state, Uttar Pradesh. Now, these days, Yogi Adityanath is using his entire administration to ban a beef trade across the state.
Considered sacred by Hindus, cows are banned from being slaughtered in most Indian states. Adityanath's militia has been pushing police to crack down on the trade, which unofficially still operates in Uttar Pradesh, leading to 45,000 small meat shops being shut down in less than 24 hours. One woman telling Reuters the chief minister's men stormed into local shops, breaking windows and throwing knives out onto the street.
Millions of Muslims who are directly and indirectly involved in this business have been rendered jobless. They are now sitting at home, waiting for the court to decide whether the business they have been doing for generations is legal or not.
The appointment of Adityanath has shocked some Indians who worry Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Development for All agenda will be overrun by radical Hindu first policies, ratcheting up religious tensions that have plagued the country for decades, sometimes spilling over into all-out violence.
The DPRK is ready to react to any mode of war desired by the American. Our missile task force is part of the normal course to building up its self-defense capability in quality and quantity in order to defend their right to existence and safeguard the peace and security of Korean Peninsula.
Netflix on Monday adding fewer subscribers in the first quarter, both in the United States and around the world. But investors are unfazed, with the video streaming service still posting higher income and revenue, and the stock moving up after hours. Reuters breaking news columnist Jen Saber.
So Netflix missed its subscriber estimates, and this time it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. They're going to hit 100 million subscribers globally soon, which, I mean, is an extraordinary amount of people. So, you know, I think the market is betting that Netflix is still the company to beat.
In a rare admission, CEO Reed Hastings telling shareholders that some forays into original programming have failed, singling out the new movie sequel, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny.
So they're burning through a ton of cash, and they're basically spending on content like The Crown or Stranger Things. And, you know, that is worrisome for a lot of people. And they also flag that they're going to continue to burn through a lot of cash, $2 billion this year, for example. So basically, they're trying to spend to get subscribers so they can get more people to sign up for it.
The company, which has also produced massive hits like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black, shrugging off its competition. Hastings saying he has little interest in offering sports following Amazon's deal to offer NFL games.
Hello, Prince William.
Hello, Lady Gaga.
Good morning. Well, it's afternoon there.
Yeah, exactly. Good morning, good afternoon.
There's a lot of shame attached to mental illness. You feel like something is wrong with you. And in my life, I go, oh my goodness, look at all these beautiful, wonderful things that I have, and I should be so happy. But you can't help it if in the morning when you wake up, you are so tired, you are so sad, you are so full of anxiety and the shakes that you can barely think. But it was like saying, this is a part of me, and that's okay.
It's interesting to see and hear from you how much having that conversation or having that ability to speak to someone really made a difference to you. And I think for me, the little bits that I've learned so far about mental health is very much the case of, you know, it's okay to have this conversation. It's really important to have this conversation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're up to date. Check back later as stories develop.